The standing ovation echoed through the convention center as Marcus Holloway stepped off the stage, his face glowing with the kind of pride reserved for men who believe they've earned everything they have. Behind him, the massive screen still displayed the logo Connect Flow, revolutionizing remote team collaboration. My logo, my concept, my 2 years of research, design thinking, and late nights that he'd repackaged as his own genius. I sat 17 rows back, silent and still, my phone recording every word of his keynote speech. Not because I needed more evidence, I had plenty, but because I wanted to capture the exact moment of his greatest triumph, right before I turned it into his downfall. He didn't see me in the crowd. He hadn't seen me as a threat in 2 years. That was his first mistake. My name is Jordan Price, and at 28, I thought I'd finally found what every young professional dreams of, a mentor who believed in me. Marcus Holloway was a legend in the tech startup world. 3 successful exits, a reputation for spotting talent, and a keynote speaking schedule that kept him traveling 40 weeks a year. When he offered to mentor me after I won a university innovation competition, I felt like I'd been handed a golden ticket. I was working as a product manager at a mid-sized software company in Austin. Texas, decent job, decent pay, but I wanted more. I wanted to build something that mattered. For 18 months, I'd been developing a concept in my spare time, a platform that would fundamentally change how remote teams collaborated, combining project management, real-time communication, and AI-driven workflow optimization in ways no one else had cracked. I called it SyncSpace back then. Marcus and I met monthly at a coffee shop downtown, a place with exposed brick walls and overpriced lattes that he always insisted on buying. "Tell me what you are working on," he'd say, leaning back with genuine interest in his eyes. "Don't hold back. The best ideas come from fearless thinking." So I didn't hold back. I shared everything. My market research showing the $8 billion gap in the collaboration software market, my user interface mock-ups, my proprietary algorithm for predictive task distribution, my 18-month development roadmap, my pitch deck, my financial projections showing profitability within 36 months. He asked brilliant questions. He challenged my assumptions. He introduced me to potential investors who gave feedback. He reviewed my code architecture and suggested improvements. Every meeting, I walked away feeling validated, energized, certain I was on the right path. "You are onto something special, Jordan," he told me one rainy Tuesday in March. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. This could be massive." I trusted him completely. Why wouldn't I? He was Marcus Holloway, successful, connected, generous with his time. He'd signed an NDA at my request, though he'd laughed gently when I asked. "Of course, though you should know I'd never, but I understand, protect yourself. That is smart business." That conversation happened on the 14th of March. On the 29th of March, everything changed. I was scrolling through TechCrunch during my lunch break when I saw the headline. Tech veteran Marcus Holloway raises $12 million Series A for Connect Flow. The future of remote collaboration. My sandwich dropped onto my desk. The article featured screenshots of an interface that looked hauntingly familiar. The color scheme was different blues instead of my greens, but the layout, the features, the entire conceptual framework. It was mine. My hands shook as I read. Holloway's innovative platform combines project management, seamless communication, and cutting-edge AI to predict workflow bottlenecks before they happen. "I've spent 2 years developing this vision," Holloway told TechCrunch. "The remote work revolution needs tools that think ahead, not just keep up." 2 years, the exact timeline I'd been working on SyncSpace. I clicked through to Connect Flow's new website. The About page featured Marcus's headshot and a mission statement that used phrases I'd written in my pitch deck, sometimes word for word. The Our Technology page described my proprietary algorithm, slightly reworded but unmistakable. The investors listed. 3 of the 4 contacts Marcus had introduced me to for feedback. There was no mention of me, no co-founder credit, no acknowledgement, nothing. I immediately called Marcus, straight to voicemail. I texted, "We need to talk about ConnectFlow. Call me." 3 hours later, he responded, "Hey Jordan, exciting news, right? Happy to chat soon. Swamped with press today, we'll reach out next week." Next week came, no call. I tried again. "Marcus, ConnectFlow is based on my work. We need to discuss this immediately." This time, his response came from a lawyer. A cease-and-desist letter arrived via email at 9:47 p.m. on a Friday. It accused me of attempting to claim credit for proprietary work developed independently by Mr. Holloway and threatened legal action if I continued to spread defamatory claims that could damage Mr. Holloway's reputation and business interests. I sat in my apartment, staring at the letter on my screen, feeling something inside me crack and then harden. He hadn't just stolen my idea. He'd weaponized the legal system to silence me before I could even speak. That weekend, I didn't sleep. I paced. I raged. I cried exactly once, then stopped because tears weren't useful. What was useful was evidence. I opened my laptop and started cataloging everything. Time-stamped emails where I'd sent Marcus my pitch deck, mock-ups and algorithm, documentation calendar, invites for every meeting where we discussed SyncSpace, the NDA he'd signed, dated 7 months before ConnectFlow's announcement voice, memos I'd recorded after our meetings, summarizing what we'd discussed, a habit from my project management training, Git commit logs showing my code development, dating back 22 months Google Drive metadata proving I'd created my design files months before ConnectFlow's debut text messages, where Marcus explicitly referenced your project and your alq state. The evidence was overwhelming, but as I organized it into folders, a cold realization settled over me. Evidence wasn't enough. Marcus had money now, $12 million and a legal team. If I sued, it would take years and cost more than I had. Even if I won eventually, he'd have first-mover advantage in the market. ConnectFlow would be established. I'd be that person who claimed they invented it, forever fighting an uphill battle. The system was designed to protect people like him, so I'd have to be smarter than the system. I spent the next 3 days researching Marcus Holloway, not a mentor I thought I knew, but the businessman I clearly didn't. I found something interesting buried in a 7-year-old lawsuit settlement. Marcus had been accused of misappropriating trade secrets from a previous employer. The case settled confidentially, terms undisclosed, but the docket was public record. This wasn't his first time. That is when my approach shifted. I wasn't going to fight him in court, at least not first. I was going to build an airtight case, let him think he'd won, and then systematically dismantle his credibility in front of the people whose opinions mattered most, his investors, his board, and the tech community. But I'd need time, and patience, and perfect execution. So I went quiet. I didn't send angry emails. I didn't post on social media. I didn't badmouth him to mutual connections. To the outside world, I disappeared from Marcus Holloway's orbit entirely. But behind the scenes, I was building. Phase 1, documentation. Months 1 to 3, I hired a lawyer, not a flashy one, but a meticulous intellectual property attorney named Sarah Chen, who'd handled several high-profile theft cases. She worked on contingency plus expenses, believing in the strength of my evidence. Together, we created a chronological timeline with every piece of proof, cross-referenced and notarized. We registered my original code with the Copyright Office. We compiled a 1947-page dossier that could withstand any scrutiny. Then we waited. Phase 2, intelligence gathering. Months 4 to 12, I took a new job at a competing tech company that watched ConnectFlow's growth with great interest. I stayed off Marcus's radar entirely, but I monitored everything ConnectFlow did: product launches, hiring announcements, investor updates. I also joined industry groups, attended conferences, and gradually connected with people in Marcus's network, not obviously, not suspiciously, just present. I learned that ConnectFlow was struggling with their AI implementation. Ironic, since that was the most technically complex part of my original work. the part Marcus clearly didn't fully understand when he stole it. I learned that their Series B funding round was coming up. They needed $40 million to scale. I learned the names of every board member and investor. And I waited. Phase 3, Strategic Positioning. Months 13 to 18, I started a blog about tech ethics and innovation, writing under my own name, nothing about Marcus directly, just thoughtful pieces about intellectual property, founder rights, and the dark side of mentorship dynamics. The blog gained a modest following. TechCrunch picked up one of my articles. I was invited to speak on a panel about protecting young innovators. I was building credibility as an independent voice. Meanwhile, I quietly reached out to a journalist I'd met at a conference, someone who specialized in investigative tech reporting. I didn't pitch a story. I just had coffee, built a relationship, mentioned, casually, that I had an interest in how ideas actually originate in the startup world. "Interesting angle," she said. "Let me know if you ever come across a compelling case study." "I will," I promised. Phase 4, the opening month 20 ConnectFlow, announced their Series B raise, $38 million at a $200 million valuation. Marcus did a victory lap across tech media, positioning himself as a visionary founder. That is when I made my first move. I published a detailed technical blog post titled, "The Evolution of Collaborative AI, a Case Study in Predictive Workflow Design." It outlined, with timestamps and technical depth, my development process for the exact algorithm ConnectFlow was using. I didn't mention Marcus or ConnectFlow by name. I didn't have to. Within 48 hours, 3 people in the tech community noticed the similarities and started asking questions on Twitter. Marcus's team issued a statement calling it coincidental parallel development. I said nothing publicly, but privately, I sent my journalist friend a message. "Remember that case study I mentioned? I think I have one." Phase 5, the Reckoning Month 24, the article published on a Tuesday morning, ConnectFlow's Foundation, Innovation, or Appropriation. A TechScope investigation, it was devastating. 12 pages of evidence, interviews with IP lawyers, side-by-side comparisons of my original work and ConnectFlow's product, and a timeline that made Marcus's theft undeniable. The journalist had done her job perfectly, reaching out to Marcus for comment, giving him every opportunity to explain. His responses were evasive, contradictory, and included one catastrophic lie. He claimed he'd never seen my work before. She had the NDA he'd signed. She had emails where he referenced my brilliant algorithm. She had witnesses from our coffee shop meetings. The tech community erupted. Within 6 hours, Number ConnectFlow scandal was trending. Hacker News put the article at number 1. VCs started distancing themselves publicly. I received a call from ConnectFlow's lead investor at 4:17 p.m. "Miss Price, this is Robert Chen from Maverick Ventures. I think we need to talk." The board meeting happened 1 week later. I walked into ConnectFlow's gleaming office building, the one funded by money that should have been mine, carrying Sarah Chen's 147-page dossier and a simple 1-page proposal. Marcus sat at the head of the conference table, his lawyer beside him. He looked smaller than I remembered, his confidence stripped away by 7 days of public scrutiny and investor pressure. The 5 board members looked grim. Robert Chen spoke first. "Miss Price, thank you for coming. We've reviewed the evidence presented in the TechScope article. We have questions. I have answers," I said calmly. For 90 minutes, I walked them through everything. I showed code commits Marcus couldn't have written because they contained algorithms he'd asked me to explain to him in emails. I showed design iterations with my metadata. I showed the evolution of thinking that only the true creator could demonstrate. Marcus's lawyer tried to interrupt several times. I simply kept presenting facts. When I finished, Robert Chen turned to Marcus. "Do you have any evidence of independent development prior to Miss Price's documented work?" Silence. "Marcus?" Another board member prompted. His lawyer whispered something. Marcus shook his head. He looked at me once, and I saw something I'd never seen before: defeat. "No," he finally said. "No, I don't." The room exhaled collectively. Robert Chen opened a folder. Then here is what is going to happen. The terms were delivered like a verdict. Own. Marcus Holloway would resign as CEO immediately, retaining no operational role too. I would be offered the CEO position with full founder equity 22% of the company 3. ConnectFlow would issue a public statement acknowledging my foundational work 4. Marcus's shares would be diluted to a non-voting minority position 5. A licensing agreement would compensate me for the 2 years my work generated value. I didn't receive's terms are non-negotiable, Robert concluded. The alternative is we pull funding, shut down ConnectFlow, and miss price launches, SyncSpace as a competitor with our backing. Your choice. Marcus's lawyer tried to argue, but the board had made its decision. They'd invested in innovation, not fraud, and they'd rather salvage the company with the person who actually created it. 3 days later, the press release went out. ConnectFlow announces leadership transition, acknowledges founding contributions. The statement was carefully worded by lawyers. But the truth was clear. Marcus was out. I was in. Justice, in its corporate form, had been served. I stood on the stage of the same convention center where I'd watched Marcus bask in stolen glory 2 years earlier. The audience was smaller this time. A tech ethics conference, not a product launch. But the moment was mine. My name is Jordan Price, I began, and I am here to talk about what happens when mentorship becomes exploitation and how we rebuild trust in an industry that sometimes rewards theft. The applause when I finished was different from the one Marcus had received. It wasn't about flash or funding. It was about recognition, validation, and a community saying, "We see you, and what happened to you matters." ConnectFlow thrived under my leadership. We launched 3 new features in the first 6 months, hit profitability ahead of schedule, and built a company culture that valued attribution and ethics as much as innovation. Marcus Holloway disappeared from the tech conference circuit. Last I heard, he was consulting for a mid-tier firm in Denver. His Wikipedia page now includes a section titled Controversies. I don't think about him often anymore. When I do, it is not with anger that burned out somewhere between the board meeting and my first day as CEO. It is with something closer to pity. He could have been part of something great by simply being honest. Instead, he chose theft and ended up with nothing. As for me, I am not the same person who sat in that coffee shop, eager and trusting and naive. I am sharper now, more careful with who I let close to my work. Some people call that jaded. I call it educated. But here is what I learned. Revenge isn't about destruction. It is about restoration. It is about taking back what is yours and building something that can't be stolen, because everyone knows who truly created it. My name is on the patents now, on the press releases, on the company registry, and every time someone searches for the story of ConnectFlow, they find the truth about how it really began. In my mind, on my laptop, during those late nights when I believed I was building the future, I was right. I just had to fight to prove it.